with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Monday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you live from the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, Matt Black Kia. They will get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Bike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. NBA play-in tournament starts tomorrow night. Eagles make an unexpected signing, which was a big surprise to me. And Terrell Owens said what about the Eagles and Jalen Hurts? We got a lot to get to this hour tonight on 97.3 ESPN. As always, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can comment as you watch the show right here at 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also, the text board is open at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Listening on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. So, we got to start with the big news that happened this morning. I was surprised. Anybody who says they weren't surprised by this is full of horse manure. But Ryan Kerrigan is now a Philadelphia Eagle. I never thought I would ever say that in my lifetime. But guess what? It happened. And to me, it speaks to the perception of this organization, how they perceive themselves. And you know, I've heard a lot of people who are fans of the Eagles, a lot of people who, maybe they have a certain feeling about the Eagles based on last year. And I said this last week here on 97.3 ESPN. I believe wholeheartedly that you can't take everything that happened last year to heart. Because the situation with the COVID protocols, the numerous injuries, there were a lot of things that happened that would never happen in a regular year. So I don't think the Eagles are genuinely a 4-11-1 team. And it's not just because we have a 17-game schedule this year, because of the fact that there were things that happened that were completely out of their control. There were things that happened that are just not able to be rectified with. So how am I supposed to hyper judge a team that realistically had things happen to them that would never happen in maybe a regular season or a regular situation? So for me, when I look at the Eagles coming into this year, I'm not going to sit here and just completely dismiss their chances. When I look at the Philadelphia Eagles, I realize you have a team that if Carson Wentz doesn't have 3 games that he single-handedly lost for you, and if you had an offensive line that was healthier and didn't have 13, 14 different line combinations last year, and if things just played out differently, you might have actually won the division. That's how poor the division was last year. From 1984 to 2019, over 20% of the teams that finished in last place went to the postseason the next year. In fact, 14% of those teams went from last place to first place. The Eagles themselves have gone from last place to first place, not once, but twice in the last 10 years. So I'm not promising you the Eagles are going to win the division, but Ryan Kerrigan is a sign that they're serious about attempting to win. Winning is a mentality as much as it is a action on the field and on the court. You have to believe you can win before you actually win. You have to build and plan and prepare like you can be a winning organization before you actually go out there and win. People make these grandiose assumptions about teams and players sometimes and don't factor in the intangibles. I get it. The intangibles are not sexy sometimes, but you know what? The intangibles win championships. And Ryan Kerrigan is a guy who, the reason why he is the all-time leader in Washington football team history in sacks, the reason why he has a career high 28 quarterback hits against the Eagles, more than any other team in the NFC East, is because he has intangibles. Ryan Kerrigan isn't the fastest. He isn't the strongest. He isn't the most electrifying pass rusher. He's just the one who works harder than most of the guys in the league. He's relentless. He's got a high motor, as the scouts like to call it. He is somebody who is he's a standard guy, kind of like what Chris Long was back in 2017. These are the kind of moves that build a foundation for your franchise moving forward. So when the team is on the practice field, when the team is in the meeting rooms, it's not just Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox saying things. It's Kerrigan now. It's a guy who had a high level of success outside the Eagles organization telling you as a young player, you have to do X, Y, Z to be successful. Never, ever, ever undervalue veteran leadership in a locker room, in an organization. Because that veteran leadership are the guys who teach the young guys how to be pros. So if there's any hope that Marin Jackson from Coastal Carolina or Milton Williams from Louisiana Tech have a chance to be successful, they need as many veterans as possible around them to teach them the ropes. And you don't think a guy like Josh Sweat can learn a thing or two from Ryan Kerrigan? Of course he can. This is about the young players as much as it is winning on the field, because winning is a mentality that's created in the offseason, in practice, every day of the week. It's not something when you flip on your video game and you hit the start button that just happens. I'm sorry. I don't believe in this idea that you just hit a switch and all of a sudden you become a winner. Winners are built year round. They're not built just when you feel like it, when it's convenient for you. And this is what Ryan Kerrigan is. I can't promise you the Eagles will win the division, but I can promise you that the Eagles are serious about trying to be winners again sooner than later. Which gets me to what Terrell Owens had to say. So, by the way, Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. The text board is open at 609-403-0973. If you're listening on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can comment on the stream as you're watching the show on 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. But so Terrell Owens, for those who may or may not know, him and Chad Johnson are basically BFFs forever, okay? They're really good friends, so anything Chad does, T.O. does as well, pretty much. So they're doing this thing now called the Bleacher Report Drop Zone, which is ironic because didn't T.O. lead the league in drops one year? But anyway, it's basically a show where they give ideas about how people should bet. So Chad wanted to know from T.O. what he thought about two of the teams that he used to play for, the Cowboys and the Eagles. And he wants to know if he thinks those teams are going to make the postseason. So now you know, a little context. This is exactly what they said. Unedited. I'm just giving you the full 30 seconds for your ears to consume.
Will the Cowboys make the playoffs? They got all that firepower on offense. Why wouldn't they?
I said yes.
Will they win the NFC East?
No.
What? They don't have any competition.
Eagles always they got Jalen Hurts. He's always gonna put them in contention.
Wait a minute. The new coach just said Jalen Hurts has to compete for the starting job. Do they have faith in him?
I got faith in him.
Okay, that's all.
He's a competitor. I know what he's made of.
Okay.
So T.O., the infamous former Eagle, doesn't think the Cowboys are going to win the division. He thinks the Eagles are going to win the division because of Jalen Hurts. And it's starting to become very clear to me that all the people who don't seem to think that Jalen Hurts can be a starting quarterback in the NFL are all seem to be people who never have played in the NFL. Why is it that everyone who's either currently in the league or used to be in the league thinks that Jalen Hurts can be a quality starting quarterback in the NFL, and it's only people who have never played in the NFL who don't think he can be? Am I the only one who's noticing that pattern? Now, I'm not saying Terrell Owens is right, but he gives you something to think about. Because what T.O. is saying is, I think the Eagles are going to win the division because of Jalen Hurts. The exact quote is, the Eagles can win the division because they've got Jalen Hurts. He's going to put them in contention. That's the exact quote from T.O. Eagles got Jalen Hurts. He's going to put them in contention. I'm not promising you they're going to win the division. But what I am telling you is, I think it's about time for people who have doubts about this Eagles team to maybe start thinking a little more objectively. I don't think it's a coincidence that players across the spectrum, Jalen Mills, who's no longer with the team anymore, speaking highly of him. Guys who played with him at Alabama who are in the NFL, speaking highly of him. Guys in the NFL, former NFL players. It's becoming a pattern. So either all of these current and former players are just all delusional, or maybe we need to start buying into Jalen Hurts a little more. Now, listen, Chad brought up the point that Nick Sirianni hasn't officially named Jalen Hurts the starting quarterback, but I'm not worried about that because Sirianni's trying to set a standard right now going into his first camp, that he's not handing anybody jobs. So Jalen Hurts may be the leader in the clubhouse, but Sirianni's going to let that out there because he's trying to create a culture of competition at other positions to show that when he does name Jalen Hurts the starter, when he does name other guys starters at different positions, he's already set a groundwork for this. See, people assume that football is a meritocracy, and it's not always meritocracy. Look at Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow is getting an opportunity to play for the Jags, for Urban Meyer, because of nepotism. There is nothing in Tim Tebow's background that says that he should be brought in to allowed to audition for a tight end position over somebody who's, let's say, played the tight end position for several years in college, in high school. So football is not automatically a meritocracy. If it was, we would have never, ever seen Alshon Jeffrey back on the field last year instead of Travis Fulgham. That was Doug Peterson saying, you know what? I'm more comfortable with Alshon. I'm more comfortable with the veteran than the young player. Nick Sirianni's going the completely opposite direction. He's saying, I want everyone to come in here and compete for a job. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your job is. And you know what? The reason why we can assume that Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback is because his backup is Joe Flacco. And the third stringer is an undrafted free agent who didn't even play college football last year. So it's safe to assume that Jalen Hurts is the starter. So don't read too much into Nick Sirianni, quote unquote, not naming, unquote, Jalen Hurts the starter. I just find it very interesting. Another person who believes in Jalen Hurts, another person who is all on board with the Eagles being better than last year. Something to think about. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. All right, coming up next, we're going to take a little break from the Eagles talk, but we'll get to more of that coming up a little bit later in the hour. Keep the text coming at 609-403-0973. Also, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show here at 973 ESPN. Just follow that. Coming up next, NBA play-in tournament starts tomorrow night. You can hear it right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Basketball Hall of Fame was this past weekend. Sixers are the number one seed officially in the Eastern Conference. What does all of it mean? Ben Golliver from the Washington Post will join us coming up next right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
Coming up on the next edition of Greeny with Mike Greenberg.
When we get to Thanksgiving is when the NFC East race begins. The Cowboys, 3 of their last 4 are in the division. The Eagles, their last 4 are in the division. Washington, their last 5 games are in the division. It is incredible. They're just playing each other in December and into January.
Greeny with Mike Greenberg. Weekdays from 10 to noon on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing. Excludes prior sale. See dealer for details.
Many car dealers all around the area are having trouble getting inventory, so they're jacking up prices big time. But at Bennett Chevy, we haven't changed a thing. Why would we? You said you love our GM supplier employee pricing. You pay what our supplier employees pay, not a penny more. Bennett also gives you all the rebates, which can add up to a whopping 25% off MSRP. Plus, Bennett's got available 0% financing that'll save you thousands more. Looking for used? Good news. Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for any trade you bring us, regardless of condition or miles. Any old Heath is worth a minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. And our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, so there's no pressure ever. And Bennett Chevy is now an authorized lease return center for all brands. So now more than ever, there's just no beating Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevrolet, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Atlantic and Cape May counties. If you have been injured at work, call the law firm of D'Onofrio and Walkoff at 641-8805. Ganafo and Walkoff specialize in protecting the rights of injured workers in our community. Although the law provides a set of benefits for workers injured on the job, too often they're not provided with all of the benefits that they deserve. Local attorneys Brandon Ganafo and Adam Walkoff provide specialized professional legal representation for injured workers with results. Both Mr. Ganafo and Mr. Walkoff are certified by the New Jersey State Supreme Court as workers' compensation attorneys, an honor bestowed upon less than 1% of all New Jersey attorneys. Call Ganafo and Walkoff at 641-8805. That's 641-8805. Or reach them on the web at dnwlaw.com. Highly specialized workers' compensation representation with proven results. That's Ganafo and Walkoff.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Just because there's no action in the NBA today doesn't mean it wasn't a busy weekend. The NBA play-in tournament is tomorrow. The NBA Hall of Fame inductions were over the weekend. So much going on. And to get to it all, joining us right now on the Boardwalk Cutter Hotline, Ben Golliver, Washington Post national NBA writer, author of the new book, Bubble Ball. Great book. You want to get your hands on it. I mean, remember, this time last year, there was no NBA basketball. It all ended up being in the bubble. And this year, we're back to some sort of closer to normalcy. And Ben, as all guests, joins us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Ben, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I got to say, I'm really excited about this upcoming week of play-in basketball, and then, of course, the playoffs as well. This was a tough season, lots of interruptions, health delays, all that kind of stuff. But, the basketball is about to count, and I'm really stoked.
So before we get to the basketball that counts, I wanted to ask you about the weekend that was, not just with the basketball, but first of all, I want to ask you, because you wrote about it at the Washington Post about the Basketball Hall of Fame inductions, and it really felt like, I know a lot of people were focusing on Kobe and Vanessa Bryant and everything that happened, but one thing that stood out to me was it felt like there was just a special level of just reverence for arguably what might be the greatest class in any sport to ever enter a Hall of Fame. And because of just the sheer volume of the people who were going in, and it was just an amazing weekend of just absorbing the kind of people that were up there accepting that honor.
Yeah, I would say for sure it was a very solemn weekend because of the Kobe Bryant factor. There's no way around it. It was also kind of surreal because instead of doing it at the Hall of Fame, they did it at this casino, Mohegan Sun, up in Connecticut. And so, you had a lot of people going around gambling, drinking, have a good time. And then, meanwhile, there's all these, famous basketball luminaries walking by with, ball gowns and tuxedos and everything. So it's kind of a surreal experience that way. But of course, it was an incredible class. 3 great NBA headliners between Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, and Kevin Garnett. And I thought all 3 speeches were really memorable. Tim Duncan getting up there and saying, hey, look, this is as nervous as I've ever been, more nervous than a Game 7. I thought that was peak Tim Duncan. He never loved to talk to the media, never loved to talk about himself. But I thought he did a nice job explaining his basketball origin story and how he found his way to the sport from swimming. Of course, Kevin Garnett was just, so juiced all weekend. I mean, just kind of bouncing up and down like a little kid during the press conference. And, it was smart of them to have him go first because he helped set the tone and get everybody into the mood. And of course, he was shouting out the Celtics and their fan base and his roots in Chicago and South Carolina. But then, of course, the whole thing built up to Vanessa Bryant. I mean, she's almost as clutch as her husband, if not as clutch. I think that this is an unbelievable pressure-packed moment. You've got Michael Jordan walking you to the stage, a lot of expectations, Kobe's fans chanting his name in the building, and she just knocked it out of the park again with her speech. And, kind of flipping the idea on its head, instead of saying, here's who Kobe would thank, I want to thank Kobe, and going through all the different ways that he impacted her life. I thought it was very moving. It was something I'll never forget.
Yeah, the other thing for me is that, watching those guys go up there, and I think people forget sometimes how good some of these players are. And this is not a diss on anybody in particular, but in the NFL, we have NFL films, right? In baseball, we have Ken Burns baseball. So many times people don't understand the history of the game, even what happened just 20 years ago. So I feel like these moments where you have these induction ceremonies and these reflections are just so important to remind people about the history of the game and these great people who came before.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big student of the game, or at least I like to consider myself one. And, watching these guys who just combined for countless All-NBA, all-defensive selections, Duncan 5 rings, Kobe 5 rings, Garnett a ring. And, kind of every single year, Garnett was talking about this. Look, if you wanted to win the title, you had to go through either Kobe or Duncan, and just some legendary battles between the Spurs and the Lakers over the years, too. I mean, there was so much basketball history to it. And that's before you even get to the rest of the class. I mean, Tamika Catchings had a great speech. You go right down the list of some of the, very celebrated coaches who got in, and Rudy Tomjanovich, I think he sometimes does get overlooked by history, being that coach of the Rockets teams that won the titles in between Jordan's three-peats. I think that sometimes they get short shrift historically. And, of course, Hakeem Olajuwon, just one of the greatest centers of all time, to be there in person, to pay respects to Rudy T. It was fascinating, but, it goes back a little bit to the Kobe factor. It was a little bit of a memorial, to be honest, as well. I mean, you had guys like Magic and Bill Russell showing up early and hugging each other and just letting those hugs last for like a couple seconds longer. The idea that there was one of their own who wasn't able to be up there, and the idea of wanting to cherish that time together, that really struck me, just taking the ceremony in person.
Ben Golliver joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, he is the author of the new book, Bubble Ball, Inside the NBA's Fight to Save a Season. And Ben, the first time we had the play-in tournament, it was in the bubble, as you write about in your book. And now it's not in a bubble. It starts tomorrow night. People can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. And I'm excited. I know some people are detractors of this concept, but I think that this play-in tournament made the last couple of weeks of the NBA season way more intriguing and way more of a fascinating reality play playing out.
Well, I think the detractors have kind of gone by the wayside, haven't they? At least mostly. I think there's been a lot of momentum building around the idea. You look at just the payoff, LeBron versus Steph. I mean, what more do you really want? I think that's pretty much the ideal matchup from a TV rating standpoint, from a hype standpoint on Wednesday night. And even this Boston versus Washington matchup is really interesting, too. I mean, Boston's kind of limping in. The Jalen Brown injury is, really going to hold them back, I think, in terms of their playoff goals. And you've got Washington with all this momentum, I think 17-6 over their last 23, if I'm not mistaken, trying to, pull the upset after a really, really tough early start to their season. So, to me, you've got fascinating matchups in both play-ins, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then that's before we even really get into the good stuff. So, to me, it's a validated idea. I expect it to be back next year. I think that it did succeed in generating the interest that you described, as well as getting some marquee names into the actual games themselves. Look, the NBA has been hurting from a financial standpoint, billions of lost revenue during the pandemic. To me, anything that's going to build up excitement and buzz, that's going to be something they're trying to keep.
Also, you mentioned Washington. Like, we have a chance to see some incredible matchups because of this play-in tournament. Like, under the normal circumstances, Washington's not in, but now we could potentially have Russell Westbrook versus Kevin Durant, James Harden, and then Mike D'Antoni just hiding on the bench over there. We could have, in the postseason, you could have LeBron versus any variety of people in there, variable situations. So to me, the play-in, the potential matchups, it's so exciting to just kind of play around with the idea of the what ifs for these different scenarios.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, we could be getting LeBron versus Chris Paul in the first round, Lakers Suns 2-7. I mean, that would be an awesome personality matchup as well, especially right after LeBron versus Steph. I mean, just some really fun, just personality rivalries. And again, you're talking about the Hall of Fame earlier. I mean, all those guys are going to be first ballot Hall of Famers. So, those are games for history as well. It's so funny because if you're Boston, let me ask you this. If you're Boston, would you tank this game against the Wizards and try to take your shot in the second play-in game against either, Charlotte or Indiana so that you didn't have to face the Nets? Like, if you're Boston, would you rather play Philly in the 1-8 or would you rather play Brooklyn in the 2-7? I think if I'm Boston, I would rather play Philly personally. I mean, you had success against them in the past. You don't want to have to deal with KD and Harden and Kyrie without Jalen Brown. So if I was Boston, I'd actually think maybe let Washington win that one on Tuesday night. they probably won't be that risky because, you get into some pretty leveraged territory there where it's like, well, if you slip up, then you're just out and you miss the playoffs entirely. But I think most teams would prefer to play Philly than Brooklyn, don't you think?
I would say this is my only concern for Boston, and that is I don't know if they don't win that game against Washington and they got to face Indiana. I feel like Indiana is a horrible matchup for them because who on earth is slowing down Sabonis? So to me, it's kind of like a catch-22 where it's like, yeah, if you let Washington through, you can maybe get the 8 seed, but then you're risking the possibility of the dealing with the Pacers on the other end.
No, that's what I mean. It's tricky choices. And, we see teams dump games like at the end of the regular season to manipulate the matchups, like the Clippers did that the last couple of games here. That's pretty common cause. Denver did that the other night against Portland. But when you're in the play-ins, do you really have the guts to do that? I don't know. I guess it comes down to how afraid of the Nets are you? And we'll probably see a good game in that Boston-Washington matchup. It's funny, though. Everybody's been talking about the Wizards so much. I almost feel like it takes some of the pressure off the Celtics. I think that they've been so shaky and up and down this year. It's easy to write them off. Again, Washington closing so strong with Westbrook getting the triple-double record and Beal almost being the scoring champion. They've been getting a lot of buzz. So it's almost like a role reversal. I wonder if that could actually play to Boston's favor a little bit. People may be overlooking them just slightly.
Ben Golliver joining us here on Game Night on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN at Ben Golliver on Twitter, Washington Post NBA writer. The new book is out, Bubble Ball, Inside the NBA's Fight to Save a Season. Last year we had the play-in games in the bubble. This year they're not in the bubble. And that's the other side I want to ask you, Ben. How do you think that having fans at these games could affect this stuff? Because, for example, in Philadelphia, I think they've lost a total of, 11 games at home in the last 2 years? To me, I have to wonder, I'm looking at these games, could the home crowds in Indiana or Boston or LA impact any of these games?
Well, for sure. It's going to be variable because not every arena is able to have the same number of fans, right? So you're going to have louder crowds in some places than others. But if you look at the best teams in both conferences, they actually have better records at home than on the road this year. So even though it's been a tricky year, again, a lot of empty arenas, there has been a demonstrated home court advantage this season, especially among the best teams. And I think that can sometimes be psychological. It can just be comfort factor, sleeping in your own bed, all that kind of stuff. Hearing your own player introductions and getting hyped up, that's better than being at a neutral court. So I do think home court matters more than most people might expect this season, even if there's fewer crowds in the building. Especially think about it for like Philly versus Brooklyn or Philly versus Milwaukee, or even Milwaukee, Brooklyn, if we get that in the second round. I mean, home court will matter there because those series are tight. Those are all good basketball teams that have championship aspirations, and every little edge helps. And so I do think it was very important for the Sixers competitively to get that number 1 seed because it gives them an easier path through the playoffs. And it also gives them, or to the finals, I should say, and it also gives them home court, throughout the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, let's touch on that a little bit more, Ben, because the Sixers are going to allow 50% capacity for the first couple rounds of the playoffs in Philadelphia. So you're talking about an arena that only had maybe a couple thousand in there, now having a little over 10,000 people potentially in there for these games. And you have to think for the Sixers, for a team that comes into that building, no matter who they are, even if it is a team like the Nets, those Philly fans can get a little ridiculous. And you talk about this pandemic has everybody, trying to break free of their cage to say, these fans might be a little even more crazy than usual because this is the first playoff game they've seen in 2 years.
Well, I'm telling you what, I took my first trip here in months and, there was a lot of people at the airport who were pretty excited to be out and about, right? So, I mean, if that's just a typical airport environment where people are just, feeling like it's almost a party, I can only imagine what the playoff atmosphere is like. And look, 10,000 fans is no joke. You can make a lot of noise with 10,000 fans in one of those NBA buildings. And that's a lot different than the bubble. I mean, keep in mind, that was like 200-300 people in the entire building. And most of them were instructed not to cheer, not to clap, or to really make any noise whatsoever. So it's going to feel much more normal. Probably not all the way normal, but much more normal this year compared to last year. And I think for teams, again, the higher seeded teams, they're going to be using that to their advantage. That's the one trick for the Lakers. I think that they actually have a pretty clean path through the Western Conference. They match up really well with just about everybody else in that bracket on their side. before they would have to face maybe the Clippers in the conference finals. But they're going to have to do a lot of their work on the road.
You opened the door for my very next question, Ben. I wanted to ask you, between the Lakers and the Nets, whose superstars do you have more faith in their availability on a night-to-night basis?
Well, flip a coin on that one, because all those guys have missed so much time. I think for the Lakers, though, their margin of error is thinner, right? Like, they have to have LeBron at like 90+%, or it's just not going to happen. They need Anthony Davis playing at an A or an A+ level, or it's not going to happen. We saw their offense just fall to pieces without those guys here over the last couple of months. And everyone they're going to play is going to be a good offense, from Golden State to Phoenix to potentially Utah, the Clippers, whoever it's going to be. I mean, it's nothing but really good offenses. And that's before you get to the finals when you could face Brooklyn's got a historic offense. So to me, the Lakers are probably on shakier. And I've really enjoyed watching Brooklyn put the pieces together here over the last week or so. I think that they've closed strong. They showed what they needed to do from Harden, and ultimately that's what they wanted to see. I mean, when you're going back a couple of weeks and he's out and you're nervous, is our season going to go kaput? I think they saw plenty to give them a lot of confidence here heading into the postseason, and they should have a pretty easy first round matchup no matter who they draw.
I'm still sticking by my big curiosity also with the Western Conference, and that is, you mentioned LeBron and AD had to be at a certain level of ability. And I keep wondering, will they ever be at that ability? Because even LeBron was saying, I won't be 100% again this year. And I just have to wonder, any version of the Lakers that's less than what you described, I mean, do they even get out of, let's say, maybe the first round? Because it's not like the teams that you mentioned, they play the Suns, and the Suns are at 100%, and LeBron's maybe only like 75%. I just don't see how the Lakers can get out of there. So there's a possibility in my eyes that the Lakers, they're a betting favorite, a lot of books, to potentially not just win the Western Conference, but win the NBA title. I don't even know if they're going to get there, Ben.
Well, it's completely fair, concerns and doubts. LeBron has looked pretty good here the last week or so in terms of when he has played. So I think that's a positive sign if you're the Lakers fan. They also just match up really well with Phoenix. I mean, a lot of inexperienced pieces for Phoenix. It's going to be a slow down, half court type of series. And, that makes it easier on LeBron's body. And I think they execute very well offensively. The Lakers do at full strength. So they should be in good shape there. Like, if you have to take a control possession series and your choice is LeBron or Chris Paul, as great as Chris Paul is, I think you're generally going to side with LeBron. But it's all about the chemistry and the continuity, right? I mean, the best teams in the West, Denver, Phoenix, Utah, have just been rolling and playing very smooth, team-oriented basketball because they've had a lot of shared reps together. And, they've just been clicking on all cylinders here for the last couple of months. That has not been the case for the Lakers. This has to be a flip-a-switch type situation for LA. Otherwise, they're going home early like you're predicting.
Ben, I want to jump back over to the East to ask you about this. It looks like, now that we're locked in, so the Sixers are 1, Nets are 2, Bucks are 3. But one could argue that, for the first 2 rounds for the Nets and the Bucks, they may get so beat up before they get to the conference finals. Is it legitimate to say that the Sixers could actually be the favorite in the Eastern Conference, considering that their road to get there is certainly looking a little easier than what the Nets and the Bucks have to put up with?
Yeah, I'd rather go on a tough road with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving than on an easy road with the Sixers' big three. That's me personally, but I totally get the point that you're making, especially because Milwaukee, I mean, they might have to go 7 with Miami, 7 with Brooklyn, and then what does that look like in the Eastern Conference Finals, right? I mean, for Philly, it's not going to be a complete cakewalk in the first round, but we can expect both their first and second round series to be much, much easier, relatively speaking, than what Brooklyn and Milwaukee are going through. I just think there's a chance that we see, some of those highlight level plays like we saw from the Nets here the other night with the behind the back pass, off the alley-oop, off the backboard alley-oop, and you're going to see plays like that and think, oh, wow, Brooklyn's talent is here to play. And I just think they're better and deeper than anybody else in that conference. So it really just comes down to health for me. I mean, regardless of what their path looks like, I could easily see them sweeping Boston in the first round if that's what it comes to, 2-7. And at that point, they'd be nice and fresh and ready to go for Milwaukee. So I think you're overstating it slightly. Philly's in the mix, but to me, I would still put Brooklyn above them on their own tier.
He's Ben Golliver, NBA writer for the Washington Post. The brand new book, you can get it wherever books are sold. It is called Bubble Ball. inside the NBA's fight to save a season. This documents everything that happened in 2020 from before the bubble, in the bubble, and the aftermath of it. And of course, Ben, tell the folks about your other project, the Greatest of All Talk podcast.
Oh, greatestofalltalk.com. Subscribe there. We're talking twice a week. We're going to have play-in previews this week, playoff previews, of course, and, all sorts of coverage from events like the Hall of Fame. Whenever I go out there on the road, try to give a behind-the-scenes look at that as well.
Again, at Ben Golliver, also on Twitter for all your NBA coverage. As all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Ben, appreciate the time as always.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. Take care.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, that Bubble Ball, that's a book that's right up there for me. I am so excited with that book to start diving into that. I got it on my Audible already loaded up, ready to start listening to that. And of course, the NBA play-in tournament starts tomorrow night. And you know what that means? You want to get in on all the action with FanDuel Sportsbook, because the NBA play-in tournament gives teams one last shot to make the postseason. And everyone can bet this round risk-free on FanDuel Sportsbook. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or already have an account. FanDuel has teamed up with basketball legends like Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith to make sure you get your money back if you don't win. That's any user, any bet type, any game in the NBA play-in tournament. All you have to do is have a FanDuel Sportsbook account. Just open the app and opt in to claim your risk-free bet during the NBA play-in tournament. There are so many reasons why I love betting on FanDuel Sportsbook. Their app is simple to use with always-on promotions to let you get more action out of every game day. So if you're new to FanDuel Sportsbook, all you need to do is sign up with my promo code Hennig to get your risk-free bet this round, the NBA play-in round on FanDuel Sportsbook. That's promo code Hennig to get on all the basketball action exclusively with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play in President New Jersey. We find issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. New user risk-free bet for first real money wager only. And refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. We got texts at 609-403-0973. We got messages of people watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well. So we'll get to all of your messages coming up next, right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Welcome to the NBA's postseason. The first ever play-in tournament begins in Indianapolis, where the Charlotte Hornets face the Indiana Pacers. The loser faces a one-and-done. Then in Boston, the Celtics and Wizards go head-to-head. The winner secures the 7th seed and a trip to Brooklyn in round 1.
Together on 3, 1, 2, 3. Together.
The Hornets and Pacers at 6 Eastern, followed by the Celtics and Wizards.
The NBA playoffs tomorrow, exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's sports leader.
You asked for it. You got it. Fast Track Checkout at either Matt Blatt Kia location. Buy it your way. Complete your purchase online or have us deliver it. Purchase any new or pre-owned vehicle from Matt Blatt Kia in Egg Harbor Township or Toms River with 0 money down and 0% APR financing for 60 months on every 2021 Kia Soul, Sportage, or Forte. Plus, we need your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate with 0 down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 60 months. Try Fast Track Checkout. Purchase completely online and have us deliver right to your home or office. Only at Matt Blatt Kia, where you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 5/31/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Got a bucket list? Okay, now imagine the list if you won the $468 million Mega Millions jackpot. Taking a mega chance could mean making your wildest dreams a reality. After all, anything can happen in Jersey.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We got a bunch of messages over on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter to get to. Also, the text board there, 609-403-0973. By the way, shout out to Lee watching on Facebook, says, happy birthday, Josh. Well, thank you, Lee. And I thank you to everybody else who has reached out to me today. It's always nice to know that you're being thought of. So I always appreciate people who think of me. So I still have a few people to get back to on my phone, on my Facebook, who have wished me happy birthday, but I will get to all of them because that is that's a priority for me. I feel like if someone takes time out of their day to wish me happy birthday, it's on me to say thank you to them. So thank you to Lee for wishing me happy birthday. Let's get over to other comments over on YouTube. Rodney chimes in and says, I don't trust what the Lakers say about AD and LeBron's injuries. They tend to cry on every questionable foul. Well, that's not the reason why I don't trust them. I don't trust them because I think that these injuries are worse than they're saying. I think that LeBron's ankle and AD's whatever, back, Achilles, ankle, knee, whatever's going on with him. I mean, the dude's been injured numerous times at this point. I think both their injuries are actually worse than they're letting on. I think LeBron slipped up a few weeks ago when he said that he's never going to be 100% again the rest of the year. I don't think that was hyperbole. I think that was serious. And I think that he immediately started backtracking on that comment. Look, when I look at the Lakers, I look at a team that's beat up. And without LeBron and AD playing at a high level of basketball, what is that team? I don't think they are a championship team. And if you're the Lakers and you got to play either the Jazz or the Suns, that's a really hard series for a team whose two main superstars are not healthy. I'm not promising you that the Lakers can't win those games, but man, it's going to be really, really tough. It's going to be really, really tough for them to win those games, especially against the Jazz. I think that if the Jazz are anywhere near full power, they can take down the Lakers in 6 games. If it's the Suns, I see a 7-game series that can go either way. So, to me, unless LeBron is around 90% and AD is 95%, like Ben Golliver was saying earlier, I just don't see them getting out of the first round. And if they get out of the first round, who they play in the second round? Doesn't make it any easier. It gets harder from there on out. Like let's say you're the 8 seed in the Lakers and you beat the 1 seed. You think the next round's going to be easier? If you're the Lakers and you got to face the Jazz, the Suns, the Nuggets, the Clippers, or the Portland Trailblazers in any round, you better be sweating bullets. Because these guys, if they're not healthy, oof, it's a mess. I'll get back to YouTube and Facebook in just a minute, but I want to get to a comment over on the text board at 609-403-0973. We talked about the Eagles a little bit earlier, signing Ryan Kerrigan and T.O.'s comments about the Philadelphia Eagles. Texter says, Josh, in your personal opinion, how do you think the Eagles will be this year? Record included. Texter believes it's a 9-8 kind of season. Here's the thing, Jeff, for Summer's point. I think the Eagles are an 8 or 9 win team. So in a 17-game season, I think that they can at least get to 8 wins. I think their ceiling might be 9 wins, barring something that I don't know about that might happen, because they still need help at cornerback. And depending on who they sign, whether it's Steven Nelson or trade for somebody or whatever they do, I just don't have a lot of confidence in the secondary at this point in time. So, I look at the Eagles and I think offensively, they're going to be much better this year. I think Sirianni is going to get much more out of these players. And I think a healthy offensive line is going to be a huge difference from last year to this year. So that's what I think about the Eagles. I think that what is the line? 6.5 recently. I think they get more than that. I think they at least get 8 wins because I look at the schedule outside of the stretch from basically weeks 2 through weeks 7 and 8. The rest of their schedule is very winnable. You know, Adam Kaplan said himself, he thinks it's a 7-8 win schedule. So to me, I tend to think that the Eagles, they can put some winning together. Couple more comments in here. By the way, thanks as well, Jeff, for the happy birthday wishes. Jeff at Summers Point, commenting on the text board 609-403-0973. Rodney follows up on YouTube and says, Josh, are you concerned that the Sixers didn't prepare to have more shot creation next to Simmons in the playoffs, like having George Hill instead of Curry? I'm not concerned about that because I think Doc Rivers purposely was hiding things. I think that the Sixers purposely didn't play certain lineups too much, certain scenarios, because they realized that they're going to have an entire week off, which means they're going to have practice time this week for the first time in months. And I think that the Sixers are going to use that practice time wisely. I think Doc Rivers is saying, listen, I've been to the postseason not once, not twice, numerous times. I've taken the Magic to the postseason. I won a championship with the Boston Celtics. I took the Clippers to the playoffs with 3 different versions of a roster. So Doc Rivers has more playoff experience than Steve Nash as the head coach. He's had more success than Mike Budenholzer. He's had more success than Tom Thibodeau. He's had more success than Nate McMillan. The only coach in the playoffs who really can go mano-a-mano mentally with Doc, you got to worry about is Eric Spoelstra. And if the Bucks can take out the Heat in the first round, you don't have to worry about them. So to me, I'm not concerned about what the Sixers didn't prepare or did prepare because I think this week of practice is going to help them a lot. All right, thanks again. We got Mickey, we got Jeff, we got Lee. Everybody wishing me happy birthday. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for the birthday wishes. I appreciate that. I am 36 going on 72. As Gil said earlier, I am a old soul in a young body. So that's what I am. I am what I am. Josh Hennig, Game Night. Have a good night.
Health update with Robin Stoloff. Learn more, live better.
You know, if we eat while we're on the phone, standing up, or watching TV, the calories don't actually count, right? If only that were true. They're called sneaky calories. While our mind may not pay attention, our body remembers every bite. They sneak in while we're eating at our desk, in front of the TV, or while we're checking a text or email. All of this distracts us from using our senses